Yes. Yeah, a lot of good people that are.
Tremendous people.
Made the application.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we're gonna get started here, folks.
Oh, yeah.
So, looks like we're still missing a few people, hopefully they'll be trickling in.
Good seeing you right there.
Little senioritis by the amount of homework responses that continually go down. All right, so, yeah, looking at the meager homework responses that I did get from last session, it seems like folks really enjoyed the last session we had. Matt Rennie, we had the two, we had Luprino Foods and Eric from Oxy. Then we had Diana Lane. And, you know, just kind of like some out of the box thinking and solutions that people seem to enjoy. I like one comment was talking about just the creative solutions that people can come up with, even though, you know, you think of for example, Luprino Foods production, you know, water intensive, but they're doing a lot of innovative things to save water. See, you know, really trying to reduce their, I guess, raw water use and reuse as much water as possible. Any comments on those presentations or additional thoughts?
I think that, hear from Trina, all that they,
Yeah.
that is mind to have them using so much of that. And I mean, you don't normally get to see inside a place like that, so being able to see that was very eye-opening.
Yeah.
Just as an average Joe in the community.
Yeah, and I was struck too by how, sometimes we hear, well, market won't allow innovation or prohibits innovation. And that's a clear case of that not being the case. These people have tremendous price pressures on them to produce something that's wholly consumable on a massive scale. So the margins are very thin, and yet they bring incredible innovation to the side. It's really provoking challenge, like, hey, there are opportunities for innovation.
Yeah, I like the, go back to the Ducks Unlimited gentleman in that presentation, just the very different partnership. I mean, some people might be super against hunting, but yet without the hunters who wanted to maintain populations at a level so that they could hunt. That entire organization, all the work they're doing to preserve habitat and which is preserving water in that case is just amazing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool relationship.
Yeah, unlikely partnerships, unlikely relationships.
Yeah.
It's also cool to think that they weren't just like, oh, the bird population is kind of go, I don't care, I'm gonna keep hunting. They're like, no, we need to keep it up so that we can continue to keep that sustainable, because I think that there's sometimes that perception of like, use it till it's gone, not just for hunting, but for anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of cool. They're like, no, we want it to stay, but also we want to still do our stuff that we like. Good balance.
And I unfortunately, I missed last week, we talked about some online, which was for Volca, that's a different experience, you know, online, but it was really interesting. Luprino and Occidental, both, you know, what's good for the environment and water preservation, managing water is ultimately good for business. And I think, you know, yeah, they make big investments, but when we think about Luprino, their goal is to have all the production from the water. Milk, as I recall, did I hear that right? I mean, at some point they want to get that. Pretty good. It's gotta be, and ultimately, coupled with the costs. I think, I think it's got those several years. It's really interesting.
Other thoughts?
Deb's looking track, so she's.
Oh,
she's good.
Harmony's.
Yeah.
Oh, she's shocked. Yeah, shade.
Ours was a mess too for a while.
What about, it sounds like there's some just general updates going around, like we were talking about the Thornton pipeline coming up for review again from Hammer County Commissioners.
This week.
Northern Water,
Northern Water,
CDT
allocation change. And then we're talking about the new bill that's making digital. Yeah, well, it's come up in several conversations actually, and it's a big deal, but less related to water. Perhaps, other than it affects. Any other updates? Folks want to share comment on those, the last update? People happy with the Northern Water change?
How does that change municipality operation?
You get additional water. So the first application, we received 50% of what we typically CBT shares. So they added an additional 20%, so 7% shares.
And the reason they decided to increase it is just because there's more snowpack.
It's just- how they feel.
And it's very bad. So like when we have a really good snow year, we get less.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the thought is that the groundwater resources would be good, right?
Because it's supposed to be supplemental,
Right.
but it's not.
Heard them say that a lot at the last.
It is the brain, a lot of our.
Still rooted heavily in the agricultural that it came from, but the shift in municipal and industrial
Exactly.
has flipped it on its head, so the assumptions are, yeah.
Was there a lot of pushback at the 50% allocation?
There was a vote of the one of the last symposiums that said that people want 100%. So 50% was like.
We can do that a lot of years, because it's always super conservative, and then they read it.
We want to scare you. Yeah. All right, well, maybe go ahead and get started on our first, so we're gonna do a little session on our class. This one's gonna be at the end, but we have to change some speakers around a little bit. We're gonna do it at the beginning, which is probably better because we got some coffee and energy, hopefully. So we're just gonna, I have some individual questions that you're gonna think about and answer individually. I would like you to write them down so I can collect them. If you need a piece of paper, I can give you some. If you only have paper. Yeah.
You know, we can break it.
You can be virtual. So we're reflecting on the whole class. And I want you to put numbers down for your answers. What topics, speakers, discussions, anything that can, if you went to an event and you heard something, what challenged your assumptions and why? And then what is one or two things that you have done or are planning to do in your work as a result of this class? It could be new partnerships, conversations, projects, just exploration of a different area that you hadn't previously considered. And then we'll see what we get with this. If you had to tell your partner or parent or best friend, the most important thing you learned in this class, what would it be? So we're gonna take about 5 minutes, we'll take some time, think deeply, get some coffee. And then we're gonna get into small groups and share. So take.
Sure. Francie just gave it to me and it's like, this is the last one, it's for you, it's okay.
You earned it. You need it for your work.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. It is a mini rum bundt cake, so apparently maybe that'll help me tonight, finishing my capstone. Oh, awesome.
He was practicing last night.
What's his program?
Public health.
Oh, he's in public health too. Oh, cool, okay, that's awesome. Stats is one of my favorite areas in public stats. Just depended on, right? So I was turning my file paper today.
Cool. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Paper turnings that you really better than that's done.
This much. It's probably, it's hard.
I know, right?
I think these.
Yeah. It's fine. I just knew that, I just was told that there was this new place down the like. Super, super, super. Also good.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Retain.
Yeah.
It just seems like a time. Yeah, thinking back, we should have.
So she, like, would have thought.
I mean, it sounds like.
That's all I'm assuming is, you know, you're gonna stay at the. You really want.
So, and I think she was like, you know, it can be better, well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Like that environmental education and research.
Yeah.
I've heard. Yes, yeah. It's just, cool.
Yeah.
That's good. So. Hopefully, the little training that. Together. Running toward do that. Also, so there's a few other things I need. Just so it's even easier. It's gonna be very straightforward. Like they should be able to just follow a checklist. Yeah, it should just be a checklist. So hopefully it'll be easy. With a little bit that they need.
Well, I appreciate you doing that.
Of course, yeah. Hopefully. I just remember Brandon, who was before they gave me this document, it was just word count. Yeah, it was just like, talk to these people, maybe these people, and like, you don't have any email list of anybody. Contact all these people, and just. Well, I'm looking at how good this. Shape. What is this? Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes, this is part of the stuff. I learned. I mean, I definitely will be saying that I've learned from it to anybody that a future potential employer.
People still writing?
No, we do. We do, we usually type.
Yeah. You can't.
I'm certain. I'm taking something.
Mark, Montana,
It is. That's in the summer. And then like you come, you have like an essay right in like 1 hour. I had one class that had a written exam last year, and I was like cramping. I was like, I could write. I know what to say. I can tell you what I want to say. I can't write it in class. Yeah, I'll do better than if you let me use my hands. Yeah, they have those blue books. Where I don't know. Yeah, you know the blue book, the exam books. I had one class that had the blue book, and it was everybody was writing. Not the blue book. Seriously, no, everybody in the class is shaking.
Yeah. Funny, they're so busy. Yeah, 20 years ago, right?
Just Xing out left and right, just rewriting paragraphs and paragraphs. It's messy.
machines that you can just.
Yeah, yeah, that would be, I think that, I don't know if he's still gonna do, I know they started this, because we missed him. Well, I don't know how wide they are, they're definitely losing use.
Yeah.
Right? Especially with canvas exams already. I didn't even have to tell my canvas exams.
I see a few more people writing, but wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna give you my husband's phone number anyway. No, we not.
I know we're trying hard to remember. Okay, I think we're gonna switch, let's go to the next screen. Yeah, do another, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna get into small groups. And we're basically just gonna share out the wrote. You can, I probably best to go around the group for each question, so you're on the same theme. And you like spend some time kind of talking about each question and when you're done talking, go to the next question. So note if there's anything common, what's different, anything that's surprising to you that other people are coming up with for their responses. And then I've got the groups on the next slide, which you should all be sitting by each other. What was the one? I switched out David E. or Michael because Michael's wasn't here. So you are in Deb and David. Yeah. David or David.
So it's just the two of us?
And then, I think I thought I was switching a fourth person to, so let's put a fourth person, maybe Mark or Stacy, do you want to go with Tatum and Etsy?
Sure. We could slide Jennifer, we could slide Jennifer.
Okay, so
Jennifer would do. And then there's three.
That makes sense. Neither one of you with me.
trying to get people mixed if you're not like when you're saying, you know, municipality or organization, things like that.
I didn't want to.
Okay, so everybody know.
There's one now.
Let's go back to that question. And I will start.
All right.
Yeah. Here's the right place.
I'll take a second.
They are also.
So everybody, the video, very wise. The first person gets a little bit.
So. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Is that gonna- like, if there were, then you'd have to, Always go for the TV. Always. Really? Yeah. Those are things I don't think. I just love. We have in one of the classes, we were doing a whole this proposal, the entire 68 pages. We're taking breaks and kind of check.
That's like they can get out and down.
You know, I'm mostly thinking about. I've been talking about, and just like pretty much making databases. But also like only a lot of. So, thank you very much. Actually, I wish we could see water. So, I mean, we're the environment that exists. It's kind of a question. It would also, yeah, I literally was telling her, the only question I got was a question about what kind of utility water is. Which is hilarious. My project was about water in mobile home communities. One of the questions is, so like, they asked me about, I saw a rate increase, and like, so how am I going to find communities as living in water? And I was like, well, it's not considered working on their, like, they're going to be, they're not going to face us. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
So, how are the conversations?
Very good. Wonderful.
Okay, let's do some sharing out. I'm not gonna like make every single group go, but I just want to hear, as you talked as a group, what were some things that came out, challenge discussion.
We talked about the equity and inclusion discussion. I think it could have hit us in a lot of different ways, personally and trying to understand how to wrap our heads around that. That was a big
Anyone else have that too? What are the challenges to your assessment campaign? Yeah.
Just the very first flex is really on the data side of things is that, hey, our population has increased so many lower. you know, we're still really productive on the side, but we're essentially using the same amount of water that we had. We've just gotten better, more efficient, better stewards, whatever. So maybe, you know, the crises or whatever that the medias are always pushing that, like, we were talking about, like, turning on the water in between brushing your teeth or whatever, like, I don't really know if that, like, the point of that. But there's still ways to be, because not be so few longer.
Other thoughts? Did anyone hear something that was surprising when you were talking about this question together? Everyone's talking so much and now.
I don't know about surprising, but we talked. And a lot of, me personally, I had a lot of assumptions challenged with the ag conversation.
Yeah.
Hearing the explanation of like the higher yields and the more profitability, and that's part of the reason why they grow, you know, water intensive crops here. Really, I think changed some things in my mentality personally. Still think it's an interesting thing that I'm close to 75-80% of our water goes back.
Yeah.
So that I still am challenged personally of like, do we really have a water shortage or are we just growing too much? But then I don't remember if it was the Ducks Unlimited fellow, but the fellow who came in was talking about buy and dry, and you can't just expect the field to go back to quote unquote natural state after it's been row crop for 80 years.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as just we'll just stop growing.
Music to Jason's ears.
Yeah.
Greg Peterson. Yeah, did anyone else have agriculture as their channel? Yeah. Anything else?
And from that agriculture standpoint, I think just the return flow, like how that is so important to our river systems and you know, yes, 80% is agriculture, but that's the only reason we have rivers. Yeah. So it kind of begs the question as municipalities take more of that for years.
Move on. One or two things you've done or planning to do in your work as a result of this class.
Passing the word, teaching the things, letting people understand where it comes from.
Who are you gonna teach?
My staff.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my communications is something I oversee in utility buildings. They understand that background and how we got to where we are and who we are. We can tell our story better. We explain it to our residents.
Same for the coalition, you know, just growing a community engagement program for organization to be able to have more education and engagement opportunities for the general public. I just keep hearing that it's like such a big need.
Yeah, definitely.
We talked about how you eat the elephant one bite at a time, and that seems like the most level bite we can take to make it.
Yeah, and there's, you know, hopefully some partnerships out of that work too. Like a lot of people want to do that, are doing it, and so how can we join efforts and have a bigger impact?
I was just gonna say that because just in between last class and this class, Julie and I were touching bases on until you know what's out there and until you have something like this that brings people together and a simple question about, hey, you're in this industry and you have any contacts that might be interested in this? And sure enough, meeting happened, contacts happened, and now she's meeting with people I, meet with. And there are things out there that until you know who to call sometimes, you just might not be able to connect those dots. So it's a good thing to have these types of forums and classes where you can meet other people in other industries.
Think about what kind of biases I bring to the table in the conversations and negotiations.
Yeah, another place where I hope to take our organization is working more with agricultural producers in our watershed and ditch companies and just trying to be a resource for them in terms of water conservation. Because when I read A Land Made of Water, I just feel like our heritage and our history needs to be preserved.
Yeah.
So as much as we can, like, boost that sector of our society, I think it's important.
On the side of the room.
She said she wouldn't quite figure it out.
So I was really struck by the whole discussion from Jessica Thrasher with the mobile home parks in Fort Collins and water quality. So followed up with her following class and went to the thing this last weekend where they were sending out pictures at Honey Village for, water filters. And if I'm elected, that is something I would like to continue working on the state level. How we ensure that water quality in these parks. What it should be.
That's great. Yeah, Benton is.
Yeah,
Benton's working on that, as you know. That's really exciting. That was his capstone project.
Thanks for coming. That was awesome. Really good to have you there.
Anyone else can share?
A few minutes away.
One. Turn the bag. Basically, I don't open my bag. Number two, thinking of it from the big guys, more complicated, elbow and setbacks and cuts and.
Yeah. Right. Can't tell your partner, your best friend, the most important thing you learn in this.
Welcome to being.
And what were, within your groups, was there like a wide range of things that you heard, or were there some similarities? See some wide range of things?
Well, we talked about the equity, about the opening your eyes more to that piece, not really seeing that. And I think, to me, it's just, you don't just turn on the faucet and water. There's so
What'd you
much,
say?
you don't just turn the faucet on. There's so much more to it. And not working in it, just being kind of, there's so much that I learned from it. I just feel makes me a better citizen from there, and it helps me for our community development. I just never expected the connection I got.
Yeah.
So,
I think too, kind of piggybacking on that, just how important it is to stay engaged in these topics within our region, just because it impacts not just us in this room, but everyone who lives here. And I think it's really important for folks to be engaged. So like we were talking about education being such a big push, just sharing that with folks that it is so important that you understand where your water comes from and the intricate systems that it takes to get to your homes and businesses, et cetera. That hopefully that can create some hopefully buy-in and passion is kind of my hope that, yeah, oh, I'm connected to this. I'm a part of this. Yeah, sharing that.
On the finer level, sharing that information with them, which we're about to be fired, they are in Bald County and Boulder County and all the way to El Dorado Springs, from Meade to El Dorado Springs, and they got a water surcharge from left hand for one of their fire stations. And so talking about what that meant and explaining each one of your water providers means something and letting them know how that works. So he knew how to speak with them better, and then to speak to his board on how to fix them for each station. So taking out that, dealing with, because he's in charge of everything inside outside, 23 stations. So each one has its own thing. Yes, so that's very great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are they getting charged for electric water providers?
No,
Okay.
it's this.
For their usage.
That's not the station issue.
I'm just curious, because there's been a conversation that's come up in ours, we have multiple different fire districts.
Yeah.
Well, technically, I wouldn't charge you if you're using water from the fire hydrant, but yeah.
Well, no, this is a specific station.
And so it's long showers.
Oh, washing trucks.
Wash your hands.
Make sure they're pretty.
And they're, I mean, they have 90% bluegrass in a place that they like the green grass. Sorry, get rid of it.
Any other final thoughts folks want to share? Most important things? ready for
I
the
don't know about anything else, but it says that you tell your partner, my poor husband, he learned right along, this was in the class. He even told me one of the times, he was like, that's really interesting, the stuff that you're learning, you know, I mean, I talk at him after the class, but I just think that, again, now you put it to somebody.
Yeah, but it's, yeah, something I wish I would have done is maybe after these meetings, be more intentional about talking with my staff about. this. Like, that's something I would recommend to you guys to your next class and to try to have them, like, give them opportunities to push the information out to their constituents. Cause I didn't think about it until recently. Just never got it written in my staff meeting.
I really use those, that big set of kind of magazines you guys gave us, everything, I really use those to set the stage when we have our meetings. That's great, and having more of those would be great.
The citizens guides?
Yeah.
They're online.
Okay.
So that's on, Water Education Colorado. And, you know, their printed copies are not cheap, so
That's true.
I recommend the online version. But that's good to know that like you're using the resources as well. But that's a great recommendation to post that up and think about ways. Asking them to get their constituency and work with people. All right, well, looks like we've got some exciting stuff here. I'm gonna introduce, so today is all about kind of just looking forward to the future and thinking about, so this first presentation is kind of thinking about how we can use data and plan for the future.
Everybody does.
Oh, yeah, please pass your papers toward the front. And then we're gonna hear from actually, Laramie County on some of their water planning efforts. And we'll do, kind of a group discussion with Savannah and Carol, the brewery leader. And we're gonna follow up with, Claire from the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado. It's kind of wrapping up.
Thank you.
So I'll introduce our first speaker here. This is Steve Mailers. He's the founder, chief executive officer, and chief technology officer of the Open Water Foundation, which is a nonprofit social enterprise that focuses on developing open source software and data solutions to help organizations make better decisions about water. And he's also partnered with TriLink Systems, which provides a real-time environmental data management system focusing on flood warning. He grew up in Colorado. He has a BS and MS degree in civil engineering from CSU, and he's a Water Education Colorado Water Leader alumnus. He lives in Fort Collins and has previously served on the Fort Collins Water Board as a member of the Cuda Run Student Study Action Work Group, and he worked for over 25 years developing and supporting Colorado's decision support systems and software. And so with that, I will open it up to Steve.
Okay,
And thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
I will show this a bit later, but I think that might distract you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad that the title of this changed. It used to be Data for Growth, which I was a little bit uncomfortable with. So Data for a Water Future is a little bit better. This is the big Thompson flood a few years ago, in case you have forgotten about that already. There we go. All right. You've already heard some of this about my background. I'll point out.
You always love a tiger.
Grew up in Lahana. I was just gonna say, I went to high school with Mark's younger brother, Joe, who's my college roommate. It's kind of sad to hear him talking about retiring when I'm just getting going on some things. Another interesting fact is my first job was in a local grocery store. There used to be such a thing, and it was kind of run by the teenagers, and the head boy was Steve Moreno, who was a Weld County commissioner. So we used to haul people's groceries out to them.
We all escaped Lahana, didn't we?
That's right. The biggest export from Lana, well, you have the Cantaloupe and Rocky Ford, and you have the kids the next quarter. You heard about the Open Water Foundation. We do open source software and open data solutions. So the goals of this are to provide some examples of data and their sources. Is there a better place for me to stand? Maybe this one? Okay. Highlight the importance of context, right? Context is really important. Provide some examples, lots of examples of information products, emphasize some of the technologies, and illustrate the benefits of community-based information and decision-making. And we all know water touches everything in this group. Okay, I use this a lot. We have data at the bottom, which by itself maybe isn't that useful, right? We have to add some context, and then we get information, goes all the way up to decisions. And visualizations provide insight. So you've all, heard that if you have the perfect graphic or whatever, it can really make the case for what you're talking about. I like to use this too. This is from the World Economic Forum, and they put out a report, which is the world risks. And in 2018, it was pretty relevant to me. Climate and tech posed the biggest risks to our world in 2018. That was before COVID and everything went to hell, right? This year, if you look at their report, they have a 2-year outlook and a 10-year, and you can put water next to almost every one of these. So in the 10-year outlook, extreme weather events, okay, which I do flood warning systems and I deal with drought with water supplies, and that's pretty relevant. Biodiversity loss, natural resource shortages, so some of those bigger picture things. Interstate armed conflict. I would say that there are places where people are fighting over water, right? And even in Colorado, perhaps it's the Colorado River Basin. So these things are maybe kind of macro issues that you could keep in mind. So I want to, before I launch into the graphics and things, I want to talk about how we measure a few things. So water, when we measure rain, this is a cohort sensor. That's a local group that measures. Basically, the rain comes into the top, it goes into a funnel, it's concentrated. There's a column in the middle that kind of allows a smaller amount of water to be stretched out, so it's easier to read the gradation. It overflows at the top, so you can get like a 10-inch or a 12-inch storm. And I'll pass that around. If you can buy these and put them in your backyard. So that's the simple way. For the flood warning systems, we have what I call industrial strength sensors. So the funnel here is a larger funnel. If you've ever driven across the bridge on Mulberry going to the Home Depot and the Walmart, there's a flood warning station right there. So that's what they look like. So the water goes into the top. There's a couple of screens on here to keep junk out. It goes down into here and it looks like a teeter totter. So if the water fills up on one side, it gets heavy and flips it. And every time that happens, we get a radio transmission. It goes back. It's measuring 100th of an inch or a millimeter. So pretty good detail. So what are some of the issues? Well, what if the wind is blowing the rain across this? It doesn't go in. Debris, trees, pine needles that get down in there are real hassle. Birds like to build their nests in those things sometimes. Vandalism, people will shoot at it or steal the solar panels. And artificial rain. Sometimes if these are close to, let's say, a golf course, you get a lot of rain every day. All right, how we measure snowpacks. So you maybe have heard about snowplow stations. The way that's done, you have this big snow pillow. It's like a big rubber bladder, and it can have antifreeze in it. And the snow sits on top, pressurizes that. And then there's a calibration, and it says, well, that's how much snow water equivalent or weight there is. Okay, this has to be pretty big because if you've ever built an igloo as a kid or a snow cave, the snow does this arching thing, or even, in buildings, right? We have arches, and the weight will distribute around it. So that's why there's that. There's some other gauges and things here. Snow force measurements. They take a pipe, stick it down in the snow, measure the pipe, and they can measure how much water that is, right? And some of the issues, snow conditions vary a lot. There's drifts even right here. You need depth plus density or weight to get the snow water equivalent. Those things are not necessarily easy to measure. And then snow tell stations are distributed. they're sparse. There are some technologies like aerial observatory where they fly over and satellite imagery, but those things can be expensive and they have issues too. How do we measure stream flow? Well, basically we measure the depth of the water, and then we convert that to flow or discharge using a relationship. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is up at Joe Wright Creek. If you're ever up on the Hooter, going towards Cameron Pass. And the idea is if you have a nice geometry like this, there's an equation, a weir equation that you can use. Same thing for a big ditch structure here. It gets more complicated when you have a channel with rocks and you don't have this, right? So you have to survey this stuff. It can be relatively expensive and it can be inaccurate because there's a lot going on. All right, how do we measure water quality? The big thing is continuous monitoring is difficult. We can measure things like turbidity with certain sensors, but a lot of times you have to go out, grab a sample, send it to a lab. You know, that it's not a continuous online thing. This is Old Town, lots of salt, like big chunks of salt going right into the stormwater system. It drives me nuts when I walk around and see that kind of stuff. You know, we have some wetlands here, some detention ponds that can help with that. My daughter played soccer at University of Denver, and when we scrape the snow off the fields, we get this black junk from the artificial turf. So we have things like PFAS, right? Forever chemicals, microplastics. Little tidbit, people use a lot of tires on their cars. The tires get ground up, that's microplastics going into the environment everywhere. Okay. So water quality is harder. So some of the concepts, we have data sets with metadata, data about the data, but data sets often don't have the context. Time series are how values change over time, which is really important. Information products, I use that term for visualizations. Indicators are indices or scores. So you take the data, you convert them to some kind of a score, good, bad. And then stories are more complicated collections, right? So I'm going to get into some of that. So if we look at drought, and this is bleeding out a little bit, but this is yellow here. And I did put some links in here. I'm assuming you can distribute this. So that's a couple of years ago. Colorado didn't look too bad. But if we look at the context of the Western United States, it was pretty bad. And Colorado as a headwater state is impacted by some of these downstream things. Texas, Colorado sells a lot of alfalfa to Texas for their cattle. Okay, also it goes overseas to Saudi Arabia, and, you know, like from Arizona and whatnot. But these things we don't really think about, but they're all connected. All right, so snow. This is one of those satellite products, and we've developed this for the state of Colorado. So we can see, it's called a choropleth. It's a color-coded map. And we can see for all these water supply basins where what the situation is. The problem with the map is it doesn't convey time very well, right? But if we look at the time that goes with this, these are historical years, so we can see where do we sit relative to other years. We can see the 7-day change. Are we accumulating? Or is it melting off? And we can see the year to date. So when it snows, it melts. It snows, it melts. Then it starts to accumulate. When it melts, it goes into the ground, it goes into the river, it goes into the reservoirs. So this cumulative can give us a bigger picture understanding. So sometimes you just have to tweak your data to look at it. All right, this is a heat map. You may have heard heat maps talked about as, you know, a map, but you can do it for time series data. This is maximum daily air temperature at the Fort Collins CSU station. Okay, I drew these lines, and you can see old is at the bottom, all the way back to 1893. The top is recent, and you can see that it's been getting warmer. And the shoulder months, the spring, the fall, you know, summer's getting longer. However you want to think about it. This has impacts on your landscape and your agricultural water use, right? Your air conditioning, electricity demands, things like that. If we look at stream flow, we kind of have the opposite effect. So what this is showing is in the, 100 years ago, we had a lot more variability in the river. And now it's a human controlled channel to some degree, right? Physically as well as in terms of operations. And so that may or may not be bad. Maybe, we can work with nature and have high flows and things at the right time for the fish and whatnot, but that's definitely a challenge. I'll point out the 2013 flood event. What do you notice? For 2 years, we had higher flows in the Booter. So if it rains for a few days, that soaks down into the ground. If it's miles away from the river, it takes a long time for that water to get back to the river. But these major events that we're having, not only did it give you water in the immediate time, but it gives you water over an extended period. Number of new daily high record temperatures. This is the CO2 station again. It's going up. You could argue that it's a heat island effect and there's parking lots and all of that. But it is going up. And if we look at the same thing up by Joe Wright Reservoir, we have the same issue. We don't have 100 years of data, so it jumps a little bit more quickly. But if you dig into this, these are not new high temperatures on the 4th of July, right? They're on Christmas, okay? So we're losing the ability for the snowpack to stick around the way that it used to. And then we have wildfires. There's less canopy, there's more sun. We have dust on the snow, dust from China, dust from Utah, melts the snow. Okay, so let's get into some story about growth. This is the Northern Front Range. The gray are water provider or municipal boundaries, and the markers are municipalities. We have a nice patch here where we don't have a lot of cities. That's makes this area nice to live in, right? If we look at population, Fort Collins, the bigger cities tend to be on more of an even keel. They don't respond quite so dramatically. But if we look at Timnath, we have the hockey stick, right? And this is from a couple of years ago. These guys are driving some of the decisions that you're probably talking about. Larimer County versus Weld County. Weld County is growing. It's going to surpass Larimer County in the next couple of years. I'll point out 25% of the population is in unincorporated areas. You're talking about wells, these 35-acre plots, maybe a bit different kind of land use problem. Okay, so where is the growth going to occur? You probably heard about Montana, north of Fort Collins. There's also, I would use a pointer, but I don't think it works well on TVs. By Greeley, kind of growing towards the highway. I don't know Montana's current situation, but they're having trouble finding water while that. Okay. So these are the water. All right, starting over there.
On top, what is that?
Yeah.
It's a huge subdivision.
It's like, what, 5,000 people or something? Like that?
Yeah, it's gonna be something. It's like 10.
It's supposed to be a debate.
Yeah, so basically, if you know where Anheuser-Busch is,
Yeah.
you know where, Lindenmeyer Lake is, kind of out there, that whole area in between, they want to build kind of like a design. Okay, so now we look at the water providers. We're gonna give water to that population. These are all the water providers and going down the river. There's a lot of competition. Okay, where's the water gonna come from? Well, we have agriculture in these areas, so buy and dry, you've probably heard about that, buy the farms, transfer the water to consumptive use. The big thing that I will say there is, there are services that go along with this. So if a developer says, well, the only place I can get my water is from this land, it's 2 miles from town. Okay, what about fire and broadband and schools and, all that other stuff kind of gets skewed around those things. All right, ditch companies still use about 80% of the water. We have a number of those that are overlapping municipalities now, but that's a lot of utilities have people on ditch boards, right? And they kind of wear different hats, and it's going to become more of an issue. Okay, major water projects are gonna help with this. Chimney Hollow is being built already. If you've not had a chance to see that, it's pretty amazing down by Loveland. Thornton Pipeline's been in the news recently. Yes, Halligan, I was on the water board for 10 years and we did not get our permit in 10 years. And the price is like, it's like $300 million for 8,000 acre feet of water. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's just nuts. And I don't know, I have a hard time. Really, they used to want to do Seaman Reservoir here. They saw the way Halligan and NISP are going and they said, we'll do this groundwater storage thing, but they're still going to take some water out of the cooler somehow and get it up there. So we'll see what happens. All right, water conservation. I just want to say, you take your water use, you divide it by population, you get gallons per person. It's not a perfect measure, but it's something that people talk about and you can track that over time. And that's what, water conservation programs, you hear about that. That's what they're looking at. Oh, the point I'll make is a lot of people, I'll say environmental type people will say, we'll just conserve water and we don't need to build reservoirs. And okay, remember the timing, the time series, the timeline. If you conserve water by not watering grass, where do you put that water? Where does it live? It has to live in storage so you can use it at different times in the year. So you still need storage. And this is a dynamic thing that we have on our website. The point is, different municipalities, each dot represents a municipality or a utility. Their total annual water use on this axis and their water use per person. Here's Denver Water. They use the most water, but they are the most efficient at using the water. And you can say the same for Colorado Springs, Aurora. The big entities do the best at conserving water. Tourism, Aspen, right, Vail, Fort Morgan, they have dairies. Okay, so you can't compare things apples to apples. This is where the context is important.
Is that because it goes back? Denver, is that because smaller lots, just, it's, less water to landscaping?
They're more concentrated, they have high rises, they have lots of stuff like that.
It's physical function, not because they're better people.
Denver Water started the whole xeriscape.
Right, xeriscape campaign.
Like they created it, okay? So they're not, I lived in Denver for some time. They ain't the most efficient water use when it comes to their standards. They have efficiency built in, so humans could be more efficient, right? But their standards and their processes are efficient. They also have a lot of water.
Yeah.
I mean.
Denver Water gets its water from the West Slope, Colorado River and other places. They don't do buy and drive because there's no farms in Denver. Okay, so they do different things. I forgot to pass around my lead pipe. So if you've heard about lead in water, that's the cause of it. I found that under my house. When they redid a lot, they were like, that lead pipe's too heavy, we'll just get it here. Okay, we have other drivers like wildfires, a little bit hard to see, but all this colored area. So we have a high percentage of the Cooter Basin and also down in other basins impacted by wildfires. Okay, now I'm going to talk about indicators. So you take all that stuff and you boil it down into a score, for example. And so we did this for some examples. What the one I want to focus on is things like reservoir storage, how are we doing, stream flow, drought monitor, 42, these are just kind of a mock-up. So 42 is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy answer, right? And then if you click on an indicator, you get more detailed information. So for example, how are several reservoirs in the area doing as an indicator of health, drought monitor, stream flow. That's maybe like boil it up to manager level and they say, well, how are we doing? Well, there's a problem. Well, let me see what the details are. Okay, so here's some data sources, just acronyms that you can look up. Problem is everybody publishes their data in different ways. And so part of what we try to do is collect that. I should have mentioned this. A lot of what I've shown you is on a website called cooter.openwaterfoundation.org, and you can see a lot of these things. All right, I'm getting to the end. talking now about publishing your data. Some of you are in a position to perhaps influence that. It doesn't have to be complicated. So this is a landing page for the water providers. It's a spreadsheet data set. We convert it to a map because we have latitude and longitude. But you can go to our website, and if you drill down into the maps, they show you the data sources, and you can get to the data behind it. So this is pretty handy if, you're talking about all the folks out there. Colorado's decision support system, here's the link. That's all the state Division of Water Resources data. There's a thing called Colorado Information Marketplace, called data.colorado.gov. It has lots of things. Okay, business registrations. So you can search for businesses that have dairy in their name. You can get a pretty good idea of how many dairies there are, things like that. And then these are some of the tools that we've developed for the state and for other clients for automating, processing all of that into information. So if you manage engineering groups or things like that, you can take a look at these types of publishing data. I'm not going to say much about this. You can buy into very expensive platforms, but you don't have to do that. Again, there are simple ways to publish data. All right, so big picture. This is a screenshot of a flood warning system that we have for Clark County, Nevada, which includes Las Vegas. Here we have Lake Mead, the Grand Canyon. So my point is Colorado's water is critical to the Western United States. There's this concept of one water that you might be learning about. That's important. Contrast that with a single purpose entity like a water district whose job is to get water to their customer. Are they encompassing, one water concept? Maybe not. Maybe they never will. Water supply from extreme events is an opportunity. I showed you that one event, how we had 2 years of supply to the Pooter. When we're looking at atmospheric rivers in California and in some of these areas, one atmospheric river can have as much water as the Amazon River. Okay, the problem is California is set up differently. Their mountains are against the coast, hits the mountains, goes into the ocean, right? So what do we do there? There may be some opportunities. And then data and information are infrastructure, just like gray infrastructure or green infrastructure, you have data infrastructure. So here's some thoughts on water supply, the dedication policy, cash or water rights, maybe you're learning about that, is a driver of what happens. So by and dry, cities with senior portfolios like Fort Collins and Greeley, they want cash for their infrastructure, right? For their dams and reservoirs. Cities with junior portfolios, they need water rights. And they have to make growth pay. Look at Wellington, right? They need developers to bring them the water, and it's all has to be paid for. Keeping water in the Pooter and Big Thompson allows for options. If that water leaves the basin, I'll use Thornton Pipeline as an example. It is what it is. If we had 10 Thornton pipelines, there wouldn't be enough water in the basin to do much with, right? So keep that in your radar. Regional planning can help. I hope you're getting into that. And then climate change will be a continuing disruptor. And this, I think, is really true. Water is so complicated that organizations and people really are challenged to understand it. Okay. All right, so publish your data, collaborate, figure out how to get funding. People like me, if you can. Water Literate Leaders is good. Unfortunately, you guys are going to learn this, and a year from now, 50% of it is going to be some big thing out there, right? So it's kind of a continuous thing, and then keep innovating. So that's what I have.
Great.
Stand up on that one water.
Okay, so one water is where, let's say you have, you treat your water, you use it, and then you have wastewater. Instead of just saying, oh, this is water that goes out of the system, you might recycle it, or you may take stormwater and use it for a beneficial purpose other than just draining it back to the river. There are, legal things you have to worry about. I think CSU has a one water focus, and the new spur thing down in Denver has a one water focus. So yeah, I apologize if I said anything that you didn't understand.
Yeah, I wrote that down actually as something we should cover.
Yeah.
How are you working with Office of Emergency Management for like flood notifications?
So these flood warning systems, we can transmit data on a 1 minute cycle. And so typically what happens is an area will have a flood, there'll be some grant money, they'll pay to put in a flood warning system. Got to figure out how to maintain it and whatnot. And then, like Larimer County, we have a Larimer County flood warning system for the Cameron Peak burn area. And it's more than that, it's Big Thompson and other things. But there are now people who focus more energy on finding money for that and maintaining it. And then, once that data gets into the system is published, it's handed off to different people and different programs. So I don't know if there's tight coordination between any operational units, but the information definitely flows to emergency management centers and things like that.
And is part of what Open Water Foundation does, try to find more funding to install one of these?
Yeah, that's more on the TriLink systems business side that I have. And actually we do the software, but there's a whole industry that manufactures these sensors and things like that and have people that go out. They have to go out and clean the junk out of these things like once a month. These pipes, the 10-foot tall ones, they're now manufactured in Windsor. That was transferred from somewhere in California a couple of years ago. So there's an impact on the local economy as well.
And how much does one of those cost?
I'm not the guy to talk about, but it's like $5,000 to $10,000 for a station, you know, on that order.
Other questions?
Okay, I'm gonna hang around and kind of see what goes on here, so.
Well, thanks, Steve. About a 20-minute break, so we'll come back in here at 10:50 and we'll hear from Larry. Feel free to eat your snacks and do what you need to do. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Oh, see you later.
If you haven't turned in your little page.
Dig on water, there are four vessels. You know, one of the first things. It's not. It's not like alcohol. Oh, it's good. I'm so busy, like. Particularly that second. Well, my daughter goes through in Spain right now. I'm gonna go. She graduated with a I mean, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. People now looking.
Yeah. On the capstone projects. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it has, Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely. It actually, if you pull it up right now, just a simple version of it.
Building balance. And you go back 10 years ago.
It is, yeah, sort of public.
It's not just in.
I did it for class, but I also did it for my capstone. And there's more that needs to be done to it. It's not complete in a way that like it's complete. There's also only so much data like. Just the simple map would be just this one. Which just is price and information about each of them. So this is just a simple one. So you can just click on the price and it'll give you a bunch of information about it. This one doesn't do much. Click on that. It's here. So all the contact information, park number, public water system. Yeah, operators if they pop. Things like that. And then I also have, I did like a story map out of it too. So like, if you ever want to like contextualize the situation, I pretty much made like a story map to contextualize the water situation in local communities. But this is the main information map. It just has like, here's the story map that I made with all the different maps. Yeah. So this is just like contextualizing it. So we just made a bunch of maps that like show relationships between diversity and home values in mobile communities. Growth relative to mobile homes, where most mobile homes are actually in declining growth regions. Socioeconomic statuses, and then the disadvantage of that last is the use of it. That shows you actually what's like not directly. They'll show you information about anything you really want to find. Yeah, this is just for county because I mean I could have done a full state, but I just because I needed to get it. I needed to get it done. And yeah, there's like 800 something. I was like, I don't have the time to do 800 something, but I do have the time to do 40. Yeah. I'll send this. We actually are putting it's on our website too, but our website, the page isn't updated yet, but we're gonna have a web page on the Center for Environmental Justice website that'll have everything that pretty much I've done. Everything that we've done. We'll send this over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody needs it, we can definitely send it. There's a lot of, unfortunately, like, if you'll see, like, on some of these, like, there isn't a lot of information. It's like this one, yeah, admin contact, we don't have it. So that was a hope of mine in the future. I don't really, I mean, I don't have any money. So I don't have any funding to do it myself to get, I can't do it because I need a good job and I should housing. I hope is to go to community and get all those information and then have all the information. So then anybody from any level of community and over, you can just click on it, find all the information you need at any time. If you need to know the water operators, because there's a water line break, you can contact that person directly. So yeah.
That's a number one frustration there.
There's a break, yeah, you don't know who to contact. You develop this, so you knew who to contact when there's a break, when there's a low PSI, when there's low PSI, residents come over. Because they don't have any water to drink or to shower. They can just go on here and find their contacts and contact us. Well, and by law, they should stop.
Should.
They should, and so like there's other, yeah, we also have like the contact information for people to contact if they don't answer. But and another piece of it actually that we wanted to develop was including the water districts that are in the water communities. So obviously, many of these would be for house utilities and so many.
Well, that's the.
They don't know which district. Yeah. Yes. So that was something that we wanted to develop. On the website, I included a tab, and I think the state has it, where it says, you know, you can put down your address and it'll say where your district is, so I included that with that. So on our website, there's like a statement that says, like, do you know where the county or the, you know, they're the city? What's your water district? Click this thing, type in your address, it'll tell you, and then use our web map to go from there. So it's like a step-by-step process of like, okay, you have a problem. First, let's figure out who your jurisdiction is, and then figure out who to contact for that solution. So it's really simple, but it has enough information that people can use it. And if I get more money, I will be able to actually put more information in because I can put time. I guess I don't need the payments. I don't need the payments. Yeah, so I'll send you this, and I mean, I obviously, you probably know, you talked with Leslie, I assume about this. Yeah, because like we work with Leslie. Great. Yeah, super funny. Yeah, no, Leslie's been the sweetest. Leslie's been great help. Joel too, Joel's awesome. They've been great in trying to develop all this stuff. And Joel was the person. This is something that, because Joel was like, when I do water testing, if I'm allowed to do water testing. Because I don't know the jurisdiction. I don't know if they have water system. Because if they do, they have to go through the process. And if they don't. And that's something that we've been pushing, y'all look over utilities and also the county to try to do.
And it's such a weird jurisdiction, I think, because it's like, they're testing results, like.
We can't, yeah. Because those. I know, and that's. Yeah, the other piece is, we've always been confused of like, okay, so like, if a provider tests water, does it go directly to the landlord or the does it go to the residents? Because typically it's the company preference for you. But the company typically is the only one supplier they have. Which makes it easy for them, but hard for residents to go safely. Even just between residents and the park, and then it can be, and that filters into residents and planners. Is that it's the first, it's not really right. They don't like. So like, there's the end of like residential. Like the state of. If they put process and built it, that's all. And then there's no thing that's gonna be for that. And they can't. So. And then it makes the conversation of, okay, well, now, well, the whole thing's perfect, if there's liability, well, initially. You know? Yeah, so it's just a terribly. And it's not that it's easy for y'all either because of the way it's done. Actually, so our study with specifically. And so one of our studies was for the what happened once to see the environmental, like to see the perception of water quality. So that's what we're exploring now, because we just did into that, and Joel was that too. So we're gonna be, or at least the organization. Well, then, one of the big things also in my presentation, I mean, the EPA says that it's gonna be around $500 billion to change to meet their clean water needs. I mean, 500 billion. Yeah, I mean, and that was the whole question, yeah. Unfortunately, local communities will not know what's getting the this stuff. More than. Yeah, yeah. What can fix those pipes? And like when the EPA appropriations, where does it go? Municipalities, not private, residential units. It's gonna go commercial. It all goes back to money, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you know. And we're so fortunate I have fully, like, so the other various, I actually literally have to go point apart, get their water. And ask like all the information, but I have to get their water. So I can just. It takes Yeah. That would be, I would be great next time. Oh, yeah, I used to see, I was actually, I actually took a picture, I need to go on his website and use that data to make my. So yeah, we should, mine's mostly wherever we did, I used to see it mostly. That's the only thing I look at. But I'm also like kind of, doing this.
It's a really. Yeah.
Doing that.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Yes. Are you able to share?
Yes.
And then I can ask that over me.
So here, after that. All right, folks, we're gonna introduce our new.
Anyone else?
All right, take a seat, folks. Yeah, we're gonna get the presentation pulled out, but in the meantime, we're gonna hear from Laramie County on their water planning efforts. First, we're gonna hear from Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally. She was elected by a county vote in 2020 as Laramie County Commissioner, representing District 3, the southern portion of the county. Jody Shattuck McNally is the first woman to serve in the District 3 seat. I did not know that. That's great. This area encompasses Loveland, Berthoud, Estes Park, and surrounding areas. She lives in unincorporated Larimer County, west of Loveland. She took office January 12, 2020. She serves the entire county as commissioner. She loves a hobby farm with her chickens and bees, hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park, and spending time with her family and friends. And is Laura coming? She is on her way. We have a lot going on. Okay, yes. It's a funny timing though. So you'll forgive me if I ever talk about certain things. Nice to see you. Well, first off, this conversation every year. I was in your seat in 2020 and a graduate of Water Literate Leaders program. And we unfortunately, we didn't get to do our last class because of the shutdown, so we didn't, but we still had a great experience. And fast forward, I'm a first woman commissioner ever to hold my seat and elected by the whole county. And this year I'm presenting in front of the water conference. So I don't know if you knew about that. So really kind of something I never thought I would do. And so I have to say how excited I am to see you all here and thanks for taking this class. It is really important education foundation basis and our partners here with the Water Center and Community Foundation, everyone. It's just so important that we work together. And I don't know if you had shared already, we had partnered earlier this year, last year. Yeah, it's the fall last year. We're May, right? All of our, this whole piece of blur. The whole last few weeks is a blur. What we did a water series education class with the Water Center and PSU and a bunch of experts and the commissioners, and we 4 series and they're online and they were phenomenal. It was a great partnership. just trying to help keep this in front of our folks and keep talking about it. And so water is something I talk about pretty much every day. And even the housing, like I don't have something else to do today. And so my phone goes off, I'm ignoring it because except if it's Joe Goose like the other day, I had sat at my phone and they're looking at me weird. I'm like, what? They didn't say anything. It was the congressman. I should think of that. But the rest, I'm not picking up the calls. But at the housing thing, this morning, talking about housing and where we're at in specific parts of the country or and even the county, talking about water. And I was like, hey, what you just shared is just a sliver of really what's the whole thing. And so I just want to present a little bit and show what we're doing here in Lerner County, which I would say is probably the most innovative work I see in the whole state. We have the wildfire commissioners and we have the water commissioners, and some of them overlap like me. And we do a lot of work in wildfire and forest health and water, among other things, behavioral health. And I won't go into all of that because we're here to talk about water. There's some commissioners that we all get together and we call and talk. And I was appointed in 2020 to the Colorado Forest Health Council, which reports directly to the governor and the state legislature. And I'm very bummed my bill died last night after a year of work because it wasn't enough time. The pilot program got killed. So it's just really bummed, but we're still doing a lot. We report and make wildfire priorities. And so forest health and I think watershed health are completely overlapping and tied together. So if you're not talking about wildfire risk and wildfire mitigation and forest health, I think that we're missing some of that important conversations. So that's a side comment. I could talk about that for hours. So stop me. But I've also been able to sit on the Pew Charitable Trust National Association of Counties Resiliency, Disaster Resiliency Roundtable and Behavioral Crisis Roundtable the last few months in DC. And I sit on the National Association of County Steering Committee. Sorry, it's a really long name, so I have to picture it. Environment, Energy, and Land Use, and the Rural Action Caucus. And we talk about waters of the US, PFAS. I mean, it goes on, and it's every month. So when I say talk about water every day, it's really important. And we're really, I don't even know where we're at the bill is. I should talk to staff about the water bill and the water protection bill. It's currently, and I'm a big fan and proponent of that. So just a little bit about myself. And just how much I see a lot of familiar faces, but I think it's phenomenal that you're all taking this class. And I have some powerful partnerships. Wildfire Town Hall got planned. Although 22nd of May, good luck to talk to you guys. Okay, because I haven't told them. I'm like, let's just get it done. So I love to hike 100 miles in Rocky every year. So I like to have a mountain theme. I was born and raised in Northern Colorado. I couldn't do every year of my life. Last year I did 120, but I always like to hike to every source of the watersheds. If you've ever driven up there and hiked, it kind of brings it all in perspective about the finite issues that we have. And I'll introduce these other folks real quick before I get going. So we're very fortunate. You hear a lot of folks have heard me speak before. I talk about being an elected commissioner and how honored I feel that even be able to serve you all as your commissioner, because I work for all of you basically. But we have a phenomenal staff who do a phenomenal job. And we are so blessed to have some great, dedicated, just the skills and expertise is just, I can't say enough about our staff. So I want to introduce a few folks that are here today and another one who couldn't be here today, but who is really kind of who championed this water plan. But first, our assistant county manager, Lori Cadrich, who is here. And she was what we call CPERS director. So here I was talking about CPERS, Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources. And she was that director, and now she's been elevated to county assistant county manager. We said a promotion. And she's phenomenal. And when she was the CPERS director, under her was Leslie Ellis, who was a community planning and development director. And now she's the CPERS director. And Leslie Ellis kind of championed this water plan for the county, which is not being seen in any other county.
If you see it, let me know, I'll say it's not like ours. And so they've been working on this and championing this, just phenomenal work, and then very, very brilliantly, we've hired Danielle, and I'll have Danielle introduce herself. And it's
Rhyminess.
Rhyminess. Yeah. If you don't know, we have a phobia of working people things, and so I don't like, I overthink it, so phenomenal staff, and I'm gonna let them jump in and present a little bit. So, Laramie County, interesting location, so again, great staff, they're gonna help present today. They make me look good. If I didn't have these guys, I just use, talking policy all day, they get boots on the ground, get it done, and I just follow along the boots and. Bigger than the state of Delaware, lots, 40% public lands, and as you all know, the site of 3 major headwaters, very important county. And again, I can't talk about the land use hearings, so please don't ask me no questions, so I can't. I'm in deliberation, a lot of the question phase, I can't talk about. So here's some things that you guys know. I just like this because I always like to remind everyone we have another thing, the Tabor and Colorado conundrum, because that really limits a lot of things that we do. We have 4.5 million people coming. We have 10 elected office commissioner elected offices in the county. I call it a very functional, dysfunctional family because we really get along. And here in the county, we sit down at lunch and we talk about things and we collaborate and we just look what we can do together. And I think that shows in how much I call the Larimer way, how we're the partnerships and collaborations, including Big Thompson Watershed Health Partnership, Big Thompson Watershed Coalition, Colorado Coalition for Clean Watershed, and so many more. We thrive on collaboration and partnerships. So, like today, this morning, they were talking about these residents and how we're going to increase by 92%. So now it seems like a lot of it is shifting over to well, but well is the water comes to Larimer County a lot. So, so also, unfortunately, we're known for natural disasters. And why do I show that? Because that's water. And after wildfires, which we have the largest in Colorado history, and then we have next in my hometown county, Fuller County, they have the most destructive with Marshall Fire, and I'm very close with the former Lafayette mayor who was a Louisville mayor who's now county commissioner. And like I said, we have a little informal group called Wildfire Commissioners. So why this is important is because of the post-fire flooding that happens afterwards and the water quality and the acidity and all the other things that come up for this. And we were just featured as the Office of Emergency Management as the hazards story map. Maybe we can send that to you, but it shows how we kind of highlights of how we have dealt with that post-fire flooding in our Office of Emergency Management. So in June 2022, after we've all been this new board and all 3 commissioners have been Water Literate Leaders graduates, which is kind of cool. And we're all doing it at the same time. So that's that base of knowledge. So that when we're talking, we have that shared base of knowledge. And then we all have taken other things. I'm on the Forest Council, Commissioner Stevens and Transportation, but they all have that water intersection. So it's great to have that base that we can kind of refer back to. And that's why we want to do that water series as well. So we asked, well, this is really a lot from Lori, Cadridge, and Leslie Ellis, and then brought on Danielle. We wanted to know existing conditions report. We had done a risk assessment after the fire for those neighborhoods and areas that were at high risk. And we everything that we kind of predicted in that has come true, unfortunately. And so we also wanted to say, okay, what is our existing conditions report? And I don't think that's been done by a whole county that I know of in the whole state. So when the work was completed, the foundational work, and this was a lot of Leslie Ellis in this post that we have hired consultants that I don't remember was there. Who was it? Brenda. Oh, thank you, Brenda. We have a lot of consultants. Yes. I'm thinking that, but I was the other group that was that, another gentleman that was from the water master.
Maybe two.
So this existing, conditions to water supplies, agricultural land, defined risks, for vulnerabilities, and we delivered this existing report. So now we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of stakeholders and people at the table, and we have this report. And so, great. You know, with risk on assessment, what do we do? And so there is a codified statute, the water elements in the master plans. That is by the state, you have to have some water elements in your comprehensive and master plans. And so, water elements are not required, but if the community does include the water element, which we decided to, these are the things that they must have to have in there. And so we did talk to all of our water providers. There's 124 water providers in Weber County. That's surprising. Doesn't surprise me anymore, but that's kind of interesting. We all have to be talking with all of them, right? And that is in supply water, ensured coordination of water supply and facility planning. You can talk to some smaller municipalities that are having trouble with water plants and water treatment and how important planning and collaboration is. So we identify water supplies facilities sufficient to meet the needs of the public and private infrastructure reasonably into. These are all the things that have to be in water plan. So, and it has to be ideally tied to the Colorado water plan. So besides what we like to look at, we also had to have these things that were included. So something to look at. And we also have to talk about growth, which is what I was talking about this morning in Loveland. This slide kind of makes me uncomfortable because we have a lot of planning work to do to the growth. And I'm always thinking, where's the water going to come from? So, okay, so here are some of the vulnerabilities and risks that we identified. I don't think these are really surprising for all of you. And one of them is information gaps, curtailment of the Colorado River, reduce water level because of climate change. We just implemented we're implementing our climate change future ready plan, and that has had dozens and hundreds of people involved and still at the table with the work plans, and also CSU Water Center been integrally involved. And so this is kind of what we assess from that plan. And then kind of that CBT reliance on water, which is very unique to Larimer County. I don't know if anyone else has heavy reliance than we do. And more water storage. And as some folks have found out, aging and essential infrastructure is some of our municipalities have been very, very costly. And that yellow one says information and planning gaps, which we hope that this plan helps with some of that. So, so this was just kind of some of the questions we asked, and I won't go through too much of that, but we can send you these slides. Just some helping us kind of frame the questions instead of starting from a blank sheet. And then we also looked at our ag preservation and irrigation efficiency, because we, as you all learned, agricultural land is just disappearing at a very fast clip and very unusual. So these are land acres, flood and sprinkler, and then land area, and then pasture corn, alfalfa, sugar beets, and other, and just the amount. This is 2020, so this hasn't been updated. But we do have probably some more numbers, but that's the latest from 2020. And as you can see, some of these are shrinking, but we're seeing a lot more sprinkler, not as much of the flooding. So, but part of these plans. So we have this plan, we put it together, and now we've had, I'm gonna actually let the person who's been leading this to kind of do that, and that would be okay. We had a master plan, water master plan open house the other day, and I think some of you came, and we had some great documents. And since Danelle's been pretty much living, breathing this for months, I'm gonna let her kind of go into this, but we're really proud of this water master plan.
Yeah, I'm just gonna touch on this, like kind of where we're at right now. So thank you, Commissioner, for setting the baseline and all the work that's been done prior to get to where we are now. So in the summer, this project started. Larimer County got some funds from FEMA, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, as well as use some of the county money itself.
to fund 2 consultants. They're a joint partnership with AE2S engineering firm who's doing a lot of the analysis, and then SWCA environmental consultants who's kind of doing a lot of the plan and coordinating some of the meetings. So we had our first kickoff meeting with our 2 advisory groups, who some of you are members here, which is very exciting to see. And we kind of put our heads together and we came up with some goals and a vision that this is the highest level. And all this information is on your website, which I'll have a link to at the end, and the open house that Commissioner referred to. All of the materials are up there. There's a feedback form already, so go ahead and browse through those materials and submit feedback. It's that open house at your own pace. It's kind of like this. So we ran off this vision that this advisory groups, the commissioners, the planning commission, and 5 Larimer County advisory boards have all put our heads together to come up with. So Larimer County, guided by a commitment to stewardship, is dedicated to safeguarding local and regional water systems, aligning future land use with available water resources, and helping to build resilient communities and ecosystems equipped to address future water challenge. It's not a short and sweet vision. That's because water is pretty complicated, and we started short, we extended it, we're trying to bring it back. And though these are pretty set in stone, they might see some minor word changes, wordsmithing through the end of the plan. I don't have draft here, but just know that some words or grammar might change. And then the goals, we have 5 goals, and each of them have about 2 to 3 objectives under each of them. I'm not calling it objectives, but minimize the threat to watersheds from hazards, communicate and collaborate to support water sustainability. This is what we're doing here. Promote water literacy in our community. This is what we're doing here. Enhance water efficiency and conservation measures, and align land use planning and water resources. So we are really grateful for the Brenner Group putting those list of vulnerabilities and risks together. And we've taken that a step further, and we've really dialed into 6 identified risk categories. And under that, we have criteria as well. These bottom 2, we actually are not mapping in our analysis because it's kind of hard to map water conservation policies. It's kind of hard to map lack of water education. I don't really know what that means. So those will show up in the plan. But as for the mapping and the analysis, it's a data-driven project. These 4 are identified, and then we have the criteria. All of this is online, and we can send the slide after. So this is the draft mapping results, kind of what they're looking like so far. It's pretty exciting. So these are the 4 maps. These are the risk categories I showed you. Supply and demand, watershed health and natural hazards, water rights, and infrastructure. So, oh yeah, these colors are a little blurred, sorry, but we're not really necessarily calling these risk anymore. We're trying to move away from the word risk because that implies a few things, calculations. We're really kind of identifying these as priority areas and stuff. And each basically, when you're able to aggregate all these maps together, we're going to get an overview map that still works. And that's how we'll use to inform the water plan. At the same time, we can de-aggregate them and start looking at very specific kind of risk categories so we can work with certain stakeholders on water rights or work with certain stakeholders on watershed health, et cetera. And then the next step, so these, I'm gonna go back, this was just completed a few weeks ago. The open house that we had last Wednesday presented these preliminary results, which is exciting. Moving on though, the next steps, we need to finish the mapping analysis. The consultants are working on it right now, aggregating the map, making sure it's kind of digestible and easy to understand. We'll work with stakeholders to identify mitigation strategies. This is key right here. You know, we can talk all about data and planning. We got to actually come up with some strategies, steps to kind of achieve what we're hoping to set out for. With that, we'll draft the water master plan, finalize, and then work to implement strategies. Please notice that this public engagement is going all the way through the end. So there'll be another open house, there'll be a workshop. We're really trying to get the community and leadership involved so we can actually implement these. So here's a QR code to the website, like I mentioned, the materials are online. And then these are my contact information if you'd like to reach out and say anything. Should we take questions now? Sure. Yeah, please.
Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't really understand number 3.
That's
so I understand the other 3 as far as risks when you're looking at water planning, but does water rights mean areas that you're trying to firm up with maybe purchasing water rights, or what does that mean?
Let's go back one more even, and let's look at water rights. Water rights impacted by administrative falls on the river. So you have your senior rights and your junior rights, and let's say if there's a fall on the river and all the water needs to go to that senior water rights, some junior water providers or junior water rights now have 0 water. That could be a vulnerability to that system. Big Thompson project use. I say the word use, another synonym is reliance. What happens if there are contaminants in the Colorado River? And the last one would encroachment on agricultural lands, also known as bio drought. Folks coming in, buying the land and the water rights, that land kind of turns to dust. Yes, Laramie County, I always like to clarify this, we are not a water provider. We do not sell water, we do not treat water. That is not our role, never has been. However, we do think that there are some bigger picture system-wide water rights.
Question that, you're saying very high priority to like the ones that fall in area. They're the ones with the highest water rates, the oldest rates, I don't understand how they're.
We could definitely break the data into kind of more that specific. This is an aggregate of a few different data sources. So it doesn't necessarily, I don't even think seniority level is included in this map. What is included in this map though is calls on the river and how much water has been lost by calls on the river. So it's more important than calls. Absolutely. And if we need this is why this is all kind of drafted and preliminary and why we're in the room together. If we want to wordsmith it and talk about stuff like this and how to communicate that, this is the time to do it.
I mean, if I saw this and I was a resident, I would be, this is the communities that are looking for water rates or are highly dependent on water rates. So that's how I would view that map, even though that's not really.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm passing around some of the documents, from that, math, open house we had last week. And these are all like, Danielle said, kind of first looks. And, it's still draft form, but something that has been a lot of data, and a lot of group working on this, so.
Yeah, and ultimately, we are trying to get this into a portal that folks can view. We're not at that level right now, but that's why we're trying to read the room and see what folks' comments are so we can address stuff like that before we do put it out.
So Danielle mentioned that the county's now a water provider. But we are in the water business from an agricultural standpoint and from an open land standpoint, as well as we operate the recreational reservoirs that are within the county, and we have for over 100 years. And so when the commissioners got together to talk about water, we have other interests as well to protect in the community, to have a high quality of life for the residents who live and visit here. And we are working with the water providers in a group called NOCO Water Alliance to try and address all of these kinds of needs. And we'll share the information that we're getting here with the water providers that are in our area as well as Weld County to see if we can begin to look at water issues more holistically in our counties.
And we do have some historic, innovative water practices is the big Thompson, Bill Thompson Farm in Berkeley, which we own we still own the water rights to that. And that had one of the first alternative transfer methods for the city of Broomfield. That's very complex, that I want to go into right now, but we have, we have some ag interests that have some interest in that, and we also have water issues, interest with like the bee dams, and I know Laura's Lori's favorite term, stockholder dams, energy dams. So there's, we talk about water, like I said, water is pretty much integrated in everything that we do and talk about, even solid waste and transportation, because with flooding and stuff washes out, grates and culverts, and so it's something that we look at water with so many different lenses. It's not just about filling our tap. It has a lot of other things that we have to consider on pretty much a daily basis. Any other questions? Thanks, Daniel. Great, thanks. And again, you guys are kind of getting this in real time. And it's kind of, so you're kind of the latest and greatest. So it's kind of exciting. So the last slide is, this is me up in the burn area, planting trees in the Buchanan burn star. And then with the governor, as we were, I don't know, who took that picture. That's some of the governor, the Colorado State Forester, some of the state reps and CSU president. This is the nursery over on the CSU campus, which is gonna become a big, maybe go producing 1 million trees a year, because there was a, pipeline deficit and there's a seed deficit across the whole country. They some say over 7 million seeds or 70 million seeds deficit in growing trees for our forests and the forest health and the climate changes, but that's all connected to water, because if the water, if those trees aren't there with watersheds and it's just coming down the mountain, racing down, it impacts water quality and how much water is racing out of our state, instead of being absorbed and staying in that natural water cycle system. So I push that because, this is, when you think about policy, it's not always about water rights and things, it's also being literally upstream in these areas and talking about this. And this is helping the nursery, and also some things we did was just getting workforce, because we are losing people in the workforce who are foresters, silviculturists, water experts, people that, you know, big interests. So we're trying to encourage youth to understand how important it is to get boots on the ground, and we encourage in that work capacity. So we have this whole next generation of water warriors and folks who are all collaborating. If you think about it, people that are in the water now, they're all starting to retire and get older. A lot of them have 20, 30, 40 years of relationships and expertise, and we need to kind of inspire that next generation and actually get paid internships and things like that. So I showed that just because this is all integrated and connected. So, other questions? Yeah.
Of course. Government entities often use eminent domain to secure private property for infrastructure projects. Is anybody thought of them using that for water?
Can you say that question one more time?
Eminent domain is often used by government entities to acquire land or private property, roads or whatever. Bridgeport, Connecticut, about 15 years ago, they took out, and they want to use it for damage to private thing. And Supreme Court upheld. Is anybody thought of using eminent domain to acquire water rights?
I don't think our water law would allow that.
No.
That's very, Colorado water law, I think that's one of the most, solid things, and decrees in water items are pretty much set by the water court and the water line. That's almost any water rights, especially senior water rights, have been, they're established for centuries, and it's almost impossible to think about. And I don't know any case of any government.
Just like
That's an option, right?
Yeah, no, I don't see that as.
You can use eminent domain for all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I have never heard it discussed in the years I've been.
Actually, it's on water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Well, the amount of money to fight that kind of legal battle, would actually be cheaper just to go out and buy it. Yeah, so that's my, it's like, oh, that's a lot of money. I think we can make that.
It is an interesting concept, and one that I'm gonna follow up on, because as we begin to look at these water issues regionally, there have been areas of the state that have used their 1041 powers to stop water from leaving their counties. And so it's interesting what's happening between local agencies around the issues of water. And one of the things we hope to use the mapping system and the vulnerability system for is to identify those areas that are most important to the county that maybe can be preserved through open space acquisition or private public partnerships to secure what's important to the county from an agriculture or recreation standpoint, or possibly from a water user standpoint. And so it'd be interesting to explore that question.
Just curious.
We haven't been even thought of anything like that, so I'd be interested too, and I'm sure we can research that and get back to staff. I also, with our land use codes and well, the gas regulations, our 1041 powers, the ability to think about repairing areas and keeping things away from the rivers and giving that zone, and some of that has all been very diligently worked with public input, and all these regulations and protections have all been kind of updated the last few years. And it's been a long, long process to kind of look at some of that. So you'll see some of that in some of the codes and stuff, because as you know, how important those areas and that water flow into riparians.
Wouldn't it be more from a water law perspective, not necessarily in that domain, but proving there's no beneficial use, like people aren't using their water rights, that's something that you could really focus in on, maybe from the obtaining water rights that are out there that aren't being used.
That's a good idea.
We had a case like that go through, and in the nineties, south of Hudson, and it didn't end well. Because the farmers couldn't prove that they were using what they were using, and they couldn't prove to get away from them. So there's another perspective in there too, from that perspective, that sometimes it's hard to prove, and you don't, if you can't prove you use, you lose. And so if there's willing parties to help kind of show that or make that case, then that's a win. But if somebody feels like you're taking it away, that's not.
But that's, I mean,
Yeah,
so like that's the example of water, right?
that is, there you go, that's a perfect kind of way to. It's not even a domain, but it's a taking them left.
Yeah.
It's a take.
Yeah, it's taking.
Okay, and I had that personally with myself when I brought to my property or several, over 2 decades ago. There was a watershed attached, and we were worried about whether we could show we could use it or lose it. And so, yeah, very complicated, and there's no way I get supported by that. It's like 30 times over the price, so.
I have a question. Would you say that the kind of overarching goal of the water plan is to promote regional collaboration?
I would say that is a big component of it, and I think having those conversations and like I said, the Bob Larimer way of trying to have these conversations and break down some of the silos and show that this regional approach is probably better. I think Lori has some really good points on this.
Well, part of our strategic plan for the county is that the county would serve in the role of convener over some of these important issues. And so one that you may have heard about in the community is childcare. So the county's not a child care provider, but we are impacted from economic development and workforce issues to child protective services and other kinds of programs that we do. And so we have an interest in it. And so the county convened a group of people, and then their work was handed off to a local provider for the next steps. And the water conversation came up similarly with all of the commissioners going to the water literate course, and water scarcity and water issues being discussed as they go out to their community conversations. The question came up, what are we doing about water, right? And what could be the county's role in that? And so that's what started with the existing conditions report. And then the board authorized us to move forward with a county-wide water plan. I think we might be the second county that has looked at a water plan. It seems like there's one in the southeast part of the state that has one, and they're using it to preserve their water in their county and to be strategic in how they acquire certain kinds of rights there or not. And that they're using it as well to consolidate the agricultural uses in the best areas of that county. And so it could be that we end up doing a similar process here.
Neil, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between the county and municipalities in developing this plan? What has that been?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we have two advisory groups. We have a water advisory group and we have a technical advisory group. Both of them have various water providers on them. I'm not gonna give out names or municipalities per se, so there's kind of some support there. I'll also mention that right now we're at that point that implement strategies, and we're looking to maybe try and do some focus groups with certain entities and stuff, whether that's even ditch companies as well. So right now it is gonna be a little more focused conversation on what's in control. I'll mention that, water providers that need to sell over or provide over 2,000 acre feet of water need to provide a water efficiency plan. And so with that, I think that those are layers that can go into the plan and potentially make areas more prioritized or less prioritized, knowing that folks in that municipal space are doing that work already. Can we tag onto that? Can we provide resources for that? So I think it's important we look at the work that municipalities are already doing and the plans that they have already created and try and align with them on top of one-on-one conversations and advisory representation.
What's the county's role from like a legal or enforcement perspective? In
I'd say that.
So, the county has no jurisdiction in an incorporated area. So if you're talking about Red Feather Lakes, that is an area that people think is the city or a town place. They're really not incorporated. So the county would have jurisdiction over issues that are up in Red Feather. However, we have no jurisdiction over Fort Collins or Timnan or Windsor, the town of Wellington, any of the communities that are incorporated have their own jurisdiction. And the county has limited powers over some things as river review agencies. But we can't go in and develop water restrictions, for example, or require water saving measures or something like that. That's even been tried in court over a recent decision that the commissioners had looked at because they wanted to do that. If water was leaving the county, then they wanted the water to be used in the best way. But the court determined that isn't the role of the county.
So the 1041 powers are limited.
Yes.
But
But
2 years ago, when we revisited those, because they hadn't updated, gotta be very careful. We did a exercise to make sure that we had every tool in the toolbox
In the 10.
into the 41 and that we were updated. And it was a very good exercise and some of the things we found was some parts of the 1041 really were still really good. And then we just added on to that. And so it's really important.
the county did that, or does it have to go to the legislature?
No, they granted us that power back in. So we did that.
Yep. And what's interesting is the evolution of what the 1041 has been used for from at least my geeky local government perspective. Because 1041 came into being at the county after a gas.
Yeah.
And so it was written really if gas was coming through or power lines or big utility was coming through, right, not thinking of water. And so water has a whole different makeup, depending on if the water is actually coming out of the river, or various watersheds or ecology, much different than thinking of a traditional gas line. And so our ordinance really did need to be updated to include more types of things that can be regulated through 1041.
Like water lines from another city.
Yes.
City south.
Fair water.
Sorry.
Seems like every time we come here, there's something important. I know. And that's when there were municipalities represented that wanted the board to approve the 1041 application. And so they were leveraging the commissioner as well on that.
1041 is a buffet, though, and you can pick, there's a whole list of stuff.
Mhm.
Weld County has declared 1041 authority over oil and gas, which is what I do. They declared 1041 authority over solar, power lines. Oh, yeah, large solar facilities are under 1041 authority through Weld County.
Because it's utility, I guess.
Just because of the sheer bulk size. I mean, the land area, but when you read through the 1041 authority, I mean, it encompasses things like airports. I believe one of them is like nuclear blast sites.
Yes.
So it's a buffet of things that people can choose to declare local authority over per state legislature, which happened in the mid-70s.
And then what's getting more complicated with 1041 is more jurisdictions are doing it.
Yep.
So it used to be that the county would serve in that vehicle, but I know you'll be surprised to hear this, some of the municipalities don't agree with the county decisions. And so then they create another 1041 authority. And so now if you're a provider going through some of these systems, I mean, especially these large systems, you're going through years of federal process, years of state process, and then you hit the local process. And you might go through the county system and a couple of municipalities before you can begin any work on a project. If at all.
One more question, one quick question. Do you, thinking about collaborating across even county lines, do you anticipate like sharing this with other counties? Like, is there anything that extends beyond?
Yeah, the group, the NOCA Water Alliance includes members from both Weld County and Larimer County. And so for sure we'll be sharing with Weld, but Larimer County has a rich tradition of sharing all of our stuff with anybody who's interested in looking at it.
Like our behavioral center, we've done tour, and sometimes I've been back a few times. We have some software that we developed from the ground up that some counties are gonna buy from us. And so there's lots of things that we're collaborating, we're partners. And I do a lot of discussing Chico County, Eagle County, Sumner County, Commissioner Kathy Chandler Henry, who is retiring. I mean, her and Commissioner Phelps are kind of the chairs and the head of the water conferences in the Colorado River Basin. What am I looking at term? So we've had a lot of conversations with them and we should exchange that information. And I know they have been interested in what we're doing up here. So. All right, well, let's get.
Yes, I gave her the.
We're gonna bring in our next speaker. But thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time very much and look forward to seeing you. I'm going to see you. Let me know about opportunity.
Okay, absolutely.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What's funny is we're coming from two completely different areas of town.
Thanks so much.
I remember about 20 years ago, they took this land out for gambling, yeah, right. With a better use.
The county said so.
Gonna get started with our next.
Good.
Get started with our next speakers here. So this is an exciting kind of like a discussion type format here. So very honored to have two former water literate leader participants, Jordana Barrick, who's the executive director of Mighty Arrow Family Foundation, and Carol Cochran, who's the founder of Horse and Dragon Brewery. Just a little bit about them. Jordana, she has been managing day-to-day operations of the Mighty Arrow Foundation, overseeing the foundation's impact investment portfolio and grant-making strategies. And this is the foundation that is tied to Odell. You do Belgium.
Never bring it back here.
But not officially tied.
Not official.
Yeah, this is Kim Jordan, the founder's foundation.
Okay. She has spent 10 years in the brewing industry, 7 years in the agricultural industry with Cargill's specialty canola unit, and now blends land, water, food systems, and climate actions together through the Mighty Arrow Family Foundation. And Carol Cochran founded Horse and Dragon Brewing Company in May of 2014 with her husband, Tim. The company is founded on 4 tenets: make great beer, treat everyone ethically, reduce your environmental footprint whenever possible, and be proactive members of your communities.
And raise great kids.
Yeah. Carol has a bunch of formal education, none of which prepared her for the rigors of running a small business focused on the triple bottom line. She firmly believes that if answers are to be found, they require us all working together too. So we're going to have a series of questions, kind of discussion with these two, and just kind of thinking about what they've learned as water literate leaders and how they've been able to apply their learnings in their careers and lives. So firstly, very basic question, how do you interface with water in your careers?
So water and beer obviously have a very
clear connection. So for us, it's easy to be very concerned about it, one, and also to act as a vehicle for bringing attention to the issues that surround it for another, because even though it's maybe not as water intensive a product as many, it's much more obvious how the water is involved. So on a day-to-day basis, we're working with water and trying to be more efficient with its use and responsible and aware of how it's supplied to us. We don't own any water rights, so we are at the mercy of our municipal provider. So we're constantly trying to keep track of both quantity and quality issues with water.
Thanks, Carol. I think the connection with water for you is much more obvious versus now I just sit in a laptop. But I started with New Belgium Brewing that also works very closely with water as our number one ingredient. As you guys probably know, beer is 96% water based on your alcohol content. But I started with New Belgium Brewing as corporate secretary over there, and then started to move into learning about what water scarcity and water security would look like for the beer company. And that led me to understand that, as Carol mentioned, we are on municipal water supply for the water that provides New Belgium as well. And you can't learn about our local water supply without also understanding what's happening on the western slope and western water issues in general. So that led me down the rabbit hole to learn about what's going on with the Colorado River Basin and other water issues around the west. Moving into the work of the foundation. So then Kim's Foundation started about 10 years ago. 11 years ago, and we implemented our land and water stewardship strategy back in 2016. And when we started that strategy, we said, well, what do we want to do in watershed health? And naturally, the Cashel Cooter watershed here in our backyard was the obvious place to start, because ultimately that is the body of water that this family made their wealth on. That's the water that supplied the beer that Kim and family kind of built their business on. And so that is still a watershed that we work on quite a bit. But we also work on other issues related to the Colorado River more broadly. So I'll stop with that.
All right, and what were some of the key takeaways that you gleaned from your participation in Water Literate Leaders? And what years did you participate?
I'm pretty sure I was in the first class. I'm an agent, and I'm pretty sure that was the first class. I want to 2017.
2017,
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, whatever. Almost time ago. And you were, I think that very next year.
Yeah, so I was 2019 to 2020 because COVID started in the middle. So we started in person and we ended in virtual. Yeah.
Wow, so we'll never forget that. That's and so the question was how do we, what are the takeaways? So, I love the contrast. You should probably go first. Her takeaways have much better contrast.
So Carol and I have been doing this discussion for the last 3 years now. I think this is our third year doing this together. Yeah, so my takeaways from Water Literate Leaders was, I don't know, it's really interesting all the different ways, things that you guys are exposed to, from industry to environment to real estate and what that means, what water means to the housing economy around here. And I thought it was really interesting as part of the assignments that we had to go to a water meeting. And I chose my water meeting to be a South Platte Basin Roundtable. And the meeting that I happened to show up to was the day or the month that they were collecting project ideas for the Basin Implementation Plan updates. And whoever was in the room was divided into subgroups and you threw out project ideas, and that's what they wrote down. And I think there was some more refinement, but that's what was submitted for the Basin Implementation Plan. And for me, it was like, wow, you can really influence some things if you just show up. And it was Water Literate Leaders that kind of inspired me to show up. And I actually continued to go to those South Platte Basin Roundtable meetings for the next year and a half, just to sit in and listen and watch how these decisions were made and what these groups were less less embracing, or like less willing to get behind as far as new ideas that were more innovative, more tech driven versus more traditional projects that were fish habitat that were kind of more time tested. And it was really fascinating to just watch that group dynamic. And I think about that quite a bit in the work that we do. And so for me, my biggest takeaway was just showing up, and what you can doing by just being there.
Amazing. I also would say continue going to water meetings if you can. I know you've heard already from Northern Water, and I feel like we should do this conversation at the very first meeting. Like, what do you take away? And then you guys can choose through the whole rest of the class. Well, I want to follow up on that, but maybe not so much on this. But anyway, Northern Water's meetings, they have twice a year, seminars, I think they call them. And they're free and open to the public, and I would definitely, they do kind of sell out their seats, so just get on their mailing list and sign up for them and go. There's always interesting information about Western Slope water, and then of course Colorado River Basin, because that's where we came from. And then the other kind of big thing that I realized in this class is that there are a lot of legislators who don't, or local politicians who don't know as much as you're gonna know about water by now. And it's a huge topic that is gonna impact this whole area. And they often get a crash course in it when they get elected, because it's a huge topic. But you, well, first off, you should run. And second, if you really don't want to run, or you don't get elected, you should ask those questions to the people, even, from city council all the way to national. What's your water policy? Are you aware of this issue? When you see a bill come down the pike that has relevance to some of these issues that you've been thinking about from this class, shoot them off an email and be like, hey, do you have a position on this? And have you thought about this? Yeah, I think that's a powerful way to stay engaged in water decision making. And then obviously the people in the class that you've met that are gonna go on to do all their different careers, maybe stay with what they're doing now, maybe move into different jobs, but you're passing class for the years. And it's kind of cool to know that you have this in common, a common interest in water, and that thought that you were enough to take this class,
Yeah, I would second that. I was also kind of blown away at some of the decision makers around the state or here locally just have zero understanding of water, where water comes from, and all the different components that go into it. And so just definitely grateful for all of you guys who have signed up for this program, and because there's not enough of that basic understanding. When I was in Water Literate Leaders, this is before my career kind of moved in a different direction, and I've since become a Larimer County Planning Commissioner. And then I sit on the board of Coalition for the Food River Watershed locally, and then American Rivers nationally. And to kind of have some of this just baseline understanding of water and the different ways that it gets moved around and thought over has really given me a strong foundation to go just get more involved in my community. And even on the planning commission level, there's not a lot of people that have that basic understanding of what these different components intersect with water. And so being able to contribute to my community in that way has been really significant.
Thanks. Can I ask questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious, you talk about the way that originally you got involved with water conservation related interest, having water be tied to the industry side of things, and that being a motivator for wanting to do more conservation. But how do you think how do we get other people or other businesses to be interested? Is there something that, so, what I am hearing you say is knowledge, the knowing of where water is coming from is what keeps you coming back and getting even more interested. So maybe that's part of it, but I
really think for most businesses, they don't pay attention until it's hitting them in the pocketbook, So it's not unfortunate that we have such a huge water year, when you're right on the brink of having to renegotiate the Colorado River Pact. Because I think that they were starting to have some really hard conversations that were making just your average Jane sit up and take notice, you know? And I think the water, rate hikes that are coming are, or maybe they were in the fiscal planning. Anyway, I think they're still in discussion actually with the council. But, those will impact, you know, for businesses. But man, I mean, we've tried for years now to do a brewery specific water brew. And it just has kind of faltered. There's the same 4 breweries show up every time, and there's, when you're running a small business or a big business, bigger problems, I guess, you know, but, it's very hard to have the bandwidth to pay attention to things that you know vaguely are important, but they don't cost you much, and so you don't prioritize. So I don't have a great answer for it. I mean, my thing is, I just try and talk about it all the time. Like, when people are over for cooking dinner and they ask what I'm bringing, I actually brought you guys a gift to do this at your house. So you start these conversations, or not use it if you don't want to. Like, why are you throwing water out there? Isn't it gonna freeze weather? I'm like, this, I don't have to water the tree as much next year, you know, like just tiny